afternoon and welcome to the National Security Space Association's SpaceTime interview series. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate your participation today. We are pleased to have with us today Ms. Joy White. Joy, thanks so much for taking time from your busy schedule to join us on SpaceTime today.
My pleasure.
Joy White is the Executive Director for Space Systems Command, headquartered in Los Angeles Air Force Base in sunny Southern California. She is the Principal Assistant to the Space Systems Integrator for Acquisition Strategies, Program Execution, and Management of an annual portfolio of over $11 billion. Ms. White leads a workforce of approximately 10,000 military, civilian, and contractor personnel to enable a resilient space order of battle, preparing the nation to fight and win a conflict in space. Additionally, Ms. White is head of the contracting activity for the U.S. Space Force, working on behalf of the Secretary of the Air Force and the Assistant Secretary for Space Acquisition and Integration to expedite the development of business processes and contracting solutions to capitalize on rapid acquisition of space assets in today's highly competitive space ecosystem. A brief word about our format. We will begin with a video, then some opening remarks by Ms. White. Slides will be projected as she speaks as well. Once her formal remarks are completed, we'll turn to Q&A. I have a number of questions for Ms. White, but we also strongly encourage questions from our audience. So please feel free to submit questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I'll get to as many of your questions as possible, given the allotted time today of 60 minutes. Also, a recording of today's event, along with the slides, will be made available on the NSSA website within the next 24 to 48 hours. We encourage you to visit the website, which can be found at www.nssaspace.org. There you will find recordings of previous unclassified SpaceTime interviews, scholarly papers on a wide range of topics, and additional information about the association, our member companies, and our distinguished board of directors and board of advisors. With that, I am greatly honored to invite Ms. Joy White to begin her opening remarks. Joy, thanks again for being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Great, Chris. Thank you so much. And thank you to NSSA SpaceTime. It's really a privilege to be here and to share with you kind of where we are right now in our Space Systems Command stand-up, our organizational structure, and what we're trying to do to engage more with industry. To kick off, I'd like to do a little bit of SSC propaganda if we can. I've provided a video kind of all about what SSC is. So if we can start that video, that'd be great. Thank you.
Imagine waking up one morning without all the comforts and necessities afforded by our nation's efforts in space. Space capabilities support our supply chain, banking and financial systems, weather tracking, power grids, as well as air, land, and maritime infrastructures. Our U.S. military is the strongest, best trained, and most equipped in the world. In the heavily contested space domain, Space Systems Command leads a team of roughly 10,000 U.S. Space Force Guardians, airmen, and civilians who are on duty 24/7 and laser-focused on providing joint warfighters with the capabilities required to protect this nation and its allied partners from adversaries like China and Russia, who control an entire spectrum of very real threats to our space infrastructure. We are Space Systems Command. This unbeatable team is headquartered in Los Angeles, California, and operates across 16 geographically separated locations to include 2 space launch deltas, SLD-45 at Patrick Space Force Base, Cape Canaveral in Florida, and SLD-30 at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. Our new organizational structure was purpose-built to anticipate and respond to the challenges presented by a contested space domain. We are driving unity of effort across joint military forces to integrate space development efforts, accelerating the pace of space procurement programs, which allows us to deliver resilient space capabilities to warfighters faster. Assured access to space is a critical component of Space Systems Command. Of the more than 3,000 active satellites orbiting the Earth today, 2,000 belong to the United States. Through our efforts in launch acquisition and operations, we've sent up the majority of those payloads. From small scientific and experimental satellites to the largest national security payloads, our launches cannot and do not fail. Our team realizes the hostile nature of today's space landscape and the critical role acquisition plays in this process. From developing and buying capabilities and launch services to the computer software that controls the satellites and processes the data, space acquisition is a complex process with great financial responsibility. At Space Systems Command, we don't believe in no-win scenarios. Our Space C2 facility teaches our programmers and guardians to look at problems from new angles and find innovative solutions by changing the nature of the problem at hand. This outside-of-the-box thinking is critical to building future space systems architecture by creating and leveraging cutting-edge concepts and turning them into production-ready programs. Our adversaries are plotting for their turn to be number one, and we will absolutely not allow that to happen. We have the best people working in the best facilities, using the most agile, industry-leading methods to meet the needs of today, tomorrow, and beyond. At Space Systems Command, space starts here.
That's fantastic,
All right, thank you.
Joy. Yeah, that's great. And I especially like to see the a lot of young faces in that video, and especially a lot of women. Obviously, it's great to see women in key positions in the Space Force, and your rise to the position you hold now is reflective of that. So congratulations. And let me turn it over to you again.
Great, Chris. Thank you so much. Yeah, in fact, we've got quite a few senior women in leadership positions across the Space Force, which is just fantastic. But as that video showed, our space security is vitally important to our nation's way of life and our ability to project American military power globally and our nation's integrated deterrence. Over the past 30 years, our adversaries have observed the strategic advantage provided by our superior space capabilities on the battlefield, and they are actively seeking to diminish and undermine them. They've publicly committed to disrupting our strategic space advantage in current and future conflicts. And we believe that fight might come, and General Gutlein talks about this all the time, my boss, the commander here, that we've got to be ready by 2026, that's how fast that they're building out capabilities that could disrupt or deny our ability to use space as we currently do. Mm-hmm. So between 2019 and 2021, the combined operational space fleets of China and Russia have grown by approximately 70%. So in just 2 years' time. Their counter space capabilities continue to mature as well, including sophisticated ASAT weapons that can hold US and allied space assets at risk. The result is a space environment that has become increasingly contested. We talk about competitive and congested as well. To me, that's kind of a mixture because the competition is good, especially in the commercial industry. So not competition from our adversaries, but just competition in the space domain. But the contested piece is what is so frightening in terms of how we will be able to prepare to fight and win. Some examples, and this chart kind of shows, you start off back in 91, there was a slight ramp up in terms of adversarial space capabilities. And then that kind of dropped off after the wall fell and during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. But starting in 2007, you all probably remember that China tested an ASAT weapon against their own weather satellite. And that kinetic kill remains the most prolific severe fragmentation event in the 5 decades of human space endeavors. Fast forward 7 years to May of 2014, when the Russians launched what was initially assessed as 3 communication satellites. And then a fourth object appeared, and it was first thought to be just a simple piece of debris from the launch. But then it started to maneuver. We actually named it Object E and watched it rendezvous and conduct close proximity ops with the rocket body from the launch. Then in December of 2019, the Russians launched Cosmos 2542, a satellite similar to a Russian nesting doll. Cosmos 2542 released Cosmos 2543, whose on-orbit behavior was questionable, bordering on hostile, though Russia claims it was just an inspection satellite. In July of 2020, Cosmos 2543 fired a projectile into outer space, demonstrating the Russians' ability to shoot and kill an on-orbit asset. And then in their latest direct descent mobile ground-based Noodle missile in November of 21, Russia destroyed one of their defunct satellites in LEO. And this reckless demonstration littered the LEO with a cloud of over 1,500 lethal, irrecoverable pieces of debris that will threaten civil and military space assets and human spaceflight for years to come. Earlier this year, China's Shenzhen 21 satellite docked with a defunct Beidou navigation satellite and performed a large burn and maneuver, and actually took that Beidou satellite out of the geo belt where it was orbiting. And then that satellite, the Shenzhen 21, returned back to geo. Now, China claims that this close proximity operation, docking and maneuver, was for peaceful on-orbit servicing. Or assembly manufacturing, but it also implicitly could be a dual use and potentially hostile capability. These examples, as well as recent counterspace and hypersonic demonstrations by Russia, China, and even North Korea and Iran, show a willingness to break from international norms of behavior in the space domain. And these types of demonstrations and threats will only become more dynamic, frequent, and difficult to predict as our adversaries continue to invest in the advancement of counterspace and hypersonic capabilities. In response to this rapidly advancing threat, Secretary Kendall identified 7 operational imperatives to ensure American superiority for the next warfighting era. And the first of those 7 OIs is to create a resilient space order of battle. Secretary Kendall acknowledged the criticality of space for nearly everything we do: comms, navigation, intelligence, and other essential capabilities, and emphasized the need to protect our assets in space and counter the threats from our adversaries. To get after this imperative, the Chief of Space Operations, General Raymond, made it a priority to design a force that's able to move at speed and meet the demands of a rapidly evolving space domain. So next chart, please. So here is our new SSC organizational structure. You all may have been familiar with and heard about SMC 2.0, which was a reorganization that we did a few years ago. Now, the pure gold out of that reorganization was that we recognized that we had a singular PEO that was over, at that time, he was over 21 ACAT programs, major defense acquisition programs. So that's a lot. If you look across the other services and within the Air Force, PEOs don't generally have that size of a portfolio. So we recognized that and said, and plus that was delaying acquisition decision making, right? Because all of our program managers and at the time SPO directors would be developing acquisitions, but they all had to get through that singular PEO, which certainly slowed things down. So we out of 2.0, we developed 4 program executive officers. And now with this recent realignment, we've actually established 5. And what the shift is now from what we did in 2.0 to now is that we've designed our PEO structure around mission capabilities. So it's not necessarily just program centric, but it's how to deliver an overall mission capability. And so you can see that the names of the PEO offices reflect actually kind of the operational deltas that are actually using the capability. So you've got combat power and space domain awareness together. You've got battle management, command and control, PNT and MILSATCOM together, as well as space sensing, which is our missile track, missile warning, and weather as well, any kind of space sensing capability. The key difference there is that those PEOs are responsible for delivering that capability in whatever manner is most effective and efficient. So it doesn't necessarily mean purpose-built custom capabilities. If the commercial market can deliver it, then they can go tap into the commercial market. If our allied partners can do it, they can tap into them. But the point is they're responsible for the capability, not just delivering those unique, exquisite programs of record that have been a traditional product of SMC. In addition, you can see from this chart, then we've also got, of course, the Space RCO, Space Rapid Capabilities Office, which is currently now run by Dr. Kelly Tournier. He just took over a few weeks ago. So he's one of within the Space Force. And then also we'll be bringing in Space Development Agency will come into the Space Force in October of this year as directed by Congress. So all of those are on the left-hand side of that chart. And for their acquisition responsibilities, they report up to Mr. Calvelli, our new Assistant Secretary for Space Integration and Acquisition. Fantastic to have him on board. He was confirmed in May and quickly has ramped up and is highly engaged. So all of those PEOs for acquisition responsibilities report to him. Now the organize, train, and equip function, of course, is the Space Systems Command commander for those PEOs, the 5 PEOs that are located in Los Angeles. And so General Gutlein has that role, but he also has the role of advising Mr. Calvelli on integration of the entire space enterprise. So he doesn't have a formal acquisition function like a PEO, but he does advise the Milestone Decision Authority, which is Mr. Calvelli, on all things space integration. And so a unique part of our realignment is we stood up the Space Systems Integration Office, which is kind of that middle box there. And they've got a ton on their plate. So it's Dr. Claire Leon is serving as the leader of that organization. And they're both tasked with ensuring that we're building an architecture that is integrated across all of the different program elements, all of the different mission capabilities. And then she's also responsible for the S8 function, in essence, the POM. So developing and building out a POM that ensures that what the architecture we're delivering is integrated and is going to be the most effective against the threat. So prioritizing what we're doing, because obviously it's not enough dollars to do it all now, but getting after what areas are probably going to be most affected, in a 2026 fight, and ensuring that those are ready and able to defend is how she's doing her prioritization, and so she really has the power of the purse strings over all of those PEOs. So that's kind of a new capability. Like I said, she's got a lot on her plate, and she's doing a spectacular job. And then another neat part of our realignment and our standing up of the Space Systems Command, well, a couple of neat parts. One was we brought the launch ranges back into SSC. And so we have assured access to space as one of our PEO organizations. And actually that PEO sits at the 45th. It's General Steve Purdy. And he's over the entire launch enterprise. So from acquisition of launch to formal, actually launching is all under his umbrella. So tremendous opportunity to find efficiencies and deliver capabilities in launch. And then the labs are another piece that got brought in under the realignment and the establishment of Space Systems Command. So there's a couple of labs that are specifically doing space work in Albuquerque, and those folks are now aligned to Space Systems Command. They still have reach back. You can see that hard line to the AFRL, because the focus here is that the Air Force has one lab, 2 services, Space Force and Air Force. But this gives the potential for our Space Lab folks to have reach back into all of the national capabilities that our Air Force research labs have. So it's a great partnership, and I think we've got our the deputy for AFRL is actually the space TEO. So it's a great way to get about doing innovation and tying it more closely with where the actual mission capability deliveries are happening, and trying to ensure that we get past that valley of death between new innovative capabilities and getting them into space and serving the domain. So next chart, please. So one of the things that we're really working on adjusting in our acquisition mindset is where we start, where we think about first. We talked about space today being competitive, and it's not only our adversaries who are fielding capabilities, it's our allies and private industry, providing a wealth of opportunities to work with like-minded partners. Last year, the global space economy was valued at $424 billion, having grown 70% since 2010. We've also seen a significant increase in private investment in space, with $17.1 billion of venture capital invested in the space industry in 2020 alone. And it's amazing to see what commercial industry is already doing, and you all are well aware of this. Proliferation of commercial mega constellations. For example, SpaceX alone has launched more than 2,500 Starlink satellites to date, with more to come. We have a huge strategic advantage that's afforded by this robust industrial base. And what we're intending to do is leverage that first. So buy what we can and then build what we must. So this chart kind of depicts that. We're going to start with looking at, can we just take data that's already being provided by the commercial marketplace and ingest it into our space architecture in order to inform the warfighter? So we don't even have to buy any hardware. We can just use capability that's already out there. And if that's not feasible, next step would be, well, is there a commercial capability out there that can do this? And can we just jump into their production line and apply that into our space domain? If either of those is not feasible, then we start to look at adapting. What can we look at in the commercial marketplace that potentially could be adjusted for a more purpose-built DoD capability to meet warfighter need? And then finally, you kind of go into the traditional approach that SMC has done exceptionally well over the years. Go out and do the full up development, production and build. So that's kind of the spectrum of how we're going to approach any new capability that's needed, and even ongoing capabilities. Is there ways we can adjust as the commercial marketplace starts doing things that maybe we did solely in the past? Can we adjust and adapt those capabilities? For example, in PNT, there's other ways to do that. Del Della Pena, as the PEO for PNT and Milsatcom, can look at, can he bring in other capabilities, not just keep building GPS in order to provide PNT? And that's the advantage of having mission capability focused PEOs. So next chart, please. So the kind of the constellation that surrounds SSC, of course, those PEOs are kind of in the center there. But I want to just talk real briefly about, so in the upper left-hand corner, one of the things we're striving for is more integration with our mission partners. So more side-by-side sitting with the warfighter, understanding what the combatant command users of space, what they need, what they're lacking, and sharing with them what commercial industry could potentially bring and whether that's worthwhile to them. So more highly integrated with our mission partners is one of our objectives. Over on the right-hand side, our international allies are invaluable, and I'll talk more about that, but we've just been able to expand and exponentially increase the value of each dollar we spend by partnering with our international allies on a lot of different capabilities. And then finally, on the left-hand side, is our engagement with industry and how we're trying to improve and expand that. And so with that, I'll go on to the next chart, please, and talk about the SSC front door. So while the SSC front door is still in its infancy, we're seeking to establish a two-step process to engage with industry. First, we've got an engagement function performed by a strategic assessment cell. And that cell will engage with industry by performing a quick scan of incoming technology for vectoring to potential SSC opportunities, and actively keeping abreast of the continuing state of commercial technology and advising our PEOs and program managers on the state of commercial, and actively connecting program offices with promising industry technology. And then they're also doing a due diligence assessment process where they're going to look at business viability, technical feasibility, and operational utility, those kinds of analysis. And this will include SSC business analysts, mission area SMEs, and a deep technical and operational experts from AFRL, our Operations Command, the Space Warfighting Analysis Center, the CTIO, and others to partner to ensure that capabilities that we're investing in or we're looking at bringing on board can be fully integrated. So right now, like I said, it's in its infancy, and that barcode is live, so you can tap on that and you'll get to their page. We're working to add a lot more capability to the front door in the coming weeks. So I ask you to continue to return to that page. One of my big things is that it needs to be a real handoff. So the purpose here is for industry to have an initial access into SSC, one-stop shop. And then there's guides behind that door that will kind of escort a company or a representative at whatever capability they have, get them into the right loop in SSC, whether it's if they think SBIR is logical, should they go to SpaceWorks? Do they have a PNT solution? So should they go straight into that organization to be looked at? All different mechanisms these guides should be able to point industry to, so that industry doesn't feel like, hey, I've got this great idea, I don't know who to tap, I'm going to email General Gutlein, right? And General Gutlein's like, gets a lot of those emails. And so how do we ensure that we've got someone actually that can help, that can get you hooked up with people that understand the capability and can hook you into the right places? They're also going to be hosting, SSC Front Door is going to be hosting both traditional and reverse industry days, where companies are invited to come talk about their various great innovations and technologies, and then get senior SSC leadership and mission capability folks to be able to hear what they're up to. Our first reverse industry day was held back in May, and it was focusing on TAC ISR. And it was unique in that we're trying to minimize the amount of time the government talks. We're not there with, hey, this is our requirement, who can meet it, our traditional kind of market research opportunities. But it's more listening, giving industry the chance to talk to our folks and share what they're doing and give folks insights to what's available out there. And again, with our connectivity with our mission partners, we can take that back then into the combatant commands and the warfighter and say, hey, this is out there. Would you find this useful? So it gives us a lot more bandwidth to share ideas among the entire space ecosystem. Our TAC ISR Reverse Industry Day included government presentations and industry panels, as well as one-on-one opportunities for companies to meet with senior leadership representing, and we had people there from, it was SSC senior leadership. We actually had our Space Force intelligence community, the S2 there. We had NGA, the NRO, and US Spacecom, the combatant command. So we will use knowledge that we gain from those events to build into our future, like our future space-based ISR roadmaps and commercial capabilities. And that's the advantage of the SWAC being there, because as they're doing force designs, they can know what technologies are out there and build those in and consider those in their space designs, on their force designs, excuse me. So the next industry day is going to be a space domain awareness cislunar, and it's scheduled for 28 July. And if the information is not up on that website yet, it will be soon. So I ask you to please come back and look as they get the details fleshed out for that. And then following that, in August, we're planning to have a tactically responsive space reverse industry day. So also looking forward to that. All right, next chart, please.
Joy, just by the way,
Yep.
National Security Space Association has been a sponsor of one of those previous industry days, and we'll be sponsoring the tactical or the responsive space event as well. So we're very pleased to play a role in helping get the word out on those activities.
Awesome, thank you, Chris. Yeah, we have relied, and appreciate you all, and appreciate several nonprofit entities that have helped us put these events on. General Gutlein's goal is a monthly engagement with industry. So we are really striving to meet that goal. And so it's kind of all hands on deck. And I really appreciate NSSA's massive assistance on getting that done. So yeah, so our commercial services office also was stood up as part of our realignment It's led by Jeremy Leader, and he's actually located in the Washington, D.C. Area. And what they're taking what we've done already with commercial SATCOM. So you may have heard of the Commercial SATCOM Services Office, or Cisco. They were part of DISA and got moved into the Space Force as part of the 2018 NDAA. And this is another way for us to do buy before build, right? What commercial services are out there that we can just utilize rather than building anything at all? And the ComSatcom office has demonstrated this exquisitely for many years. They manage $5.4 billion over 5 years in commercial SATCOM bandwidth airtime for more than 173 DoD and interagency customers. Their enhanced mobile satellite services program manages $875 million over 5 years, supporting 160,000 handheld devices. And in addition to ComSatcom, the Space Force is planning to spend $66 million on commercial space domain awareness services this year. So we're excited to scale this model of using, just actually buying services and buying data from a commercial perspective. We're looking forward to trying to use this on many different mission areas, including PNT, tactical ISR, and if available, weather, and anywhere else that we can find that we can apply those. So next chart, please. Another unique way to rapidly do procurement that we've established as a Space Enterprise Consortium. I trust many of you are familiar with this. It leverages other transaction agreements to capitalize on non-traditional and accelerate prototype solutions to deployment. SPEC offers a low barrier of entrance for hundreds of non-traditional partners and small businesses. We've grown year after year. In fact, it currently has 644 companies, 477 of which are non-traditional organizations that generally have few opportunities to work with DoD. SPEC has been benefiting nearly every mission area at SSC as well as outside of SSC, because AFRL, MDA, anyone can, in the DoD with a space purpose, can use it. In fact, I think even NASA uses it. So I think it goes beyond even DoD. We've used it for weather, all the way to missile tracking and threat emulation. So far, SPEC has had 99 awards valued at a total of $1.6 billion. With a contract ceiling, of course, the SPEC OTA has a ceiling of $12 billion. So we've got a lot more room to go on that vehicle to keep utilizing and expanding what's available on it. And then by leveraging OTA authorities, from FY19 to 21, SPEC achieved a 40% reduction in prototype award timelines. So one example is Tetra, which is an on-orbit threat surrogate designed for development and generation of next-gen tactics, techniques, and procedures for space warfighters. By leveraging SPEC, the program office was able to award Tetras 1, 2, 3, and 4 to non-traditional vendors in under 90 days from solicitation release. And by leveraging an OTA, Tetra rapidly is prototyping sensors with a 16-month authority to proceed to delivery time, including the payload integration. So amazing speed compared to traditional methods of doing space acquisition. Another example is Project Dawn, which is a first generation new classified capability that's going to be fielded by the Defense Intelligence Agency. They leveraged SPEC and government and industry collaboration early in the solicitation process, and the team was able to increase competition and cut projected program costs by 64% through SPEC. So just an amazing tool out there, and I encourage everyone. I'm sure there's many of you are part of the consortium, but it's a great mechanism for getting in, especially helping non-traditionals get through some of the challenges that you can face when dealing with government contracting. Next chart, please. And then our allies. So our allies just play a critical role, right, in deterring our adversaries and helping bring capabilities to the joint fight. More than 80 countries have their own national space programs, and Space Systems Command's International Affairs Office is constantly looking for new and innovative ways to partner with them. By creating a flexible, integrated enterprise space architecture that leverages both national and allied assets to reconstitute capabilities during conflict, we're enhancing our deterrence posture and complicating our adversaries' decision-making calculus. via collaborative forums like the Combined Space Operations Capability Architecture Working Group, which is SSC. We currently co-chair that with Germany. Like-minded nations are sharing national space strategies and working on developing interoperable capabilities. We're also working to integrate our allies into the Space Warfighting Analysis Center, their force design process, so we can take a strategic look at the systems our allies are developing and how they integrate into the broader architecture, as well as our own emerging systems to build in exportability and interoperability from the get-go. Coalitions and partnerships are not a new concept. SSC has over 58 cooperative partnerships in work with allied investments of $3 billion. We've been partnering with common PNT mission areas for decades, and we've been very successful in providing force enhancement capability to coalition forces. Some examples, just a few weeks ago, we delivered the first of 2 enhanced polar system recapitalization COM payloads to Norway, and the second one's going to be delivered this month. This partnership marks the first time that a national security space payload will be hosted on an allied spacecraft and enables the United States to deliver capability 3 years ahead of schedule, and we estimate the savings to be close to $900 million. We've also been able to prove out protected tactical waveform via cooperation with cooperative demonstrations, with the UK and Luxembourg. We've demonstrated the viability of using PDW over both international and commercial satellites in GEO and in MEO. Another key area of interest for expanding partnerships is space domain awareness. In December of 2020, Japan and the US signed an MOU to host 2 United States space domain awareness payloads on Japan's QZSS, which is their kind of GPS equivalent, their QZSS 6 and 7. The US team delivered the first payload this past March, and we'll be delivering the second one next month. So lots of exciting things to come. And we're also just exploring co-development opportunities for space domain awareness capabilities like our deep space advanced radar capability and the ground-based optical sensor system to broaden our global footprint. And kind of new and happening, we've got 415 space foreign military sales cases worth about $225 million in execution. And we expect that to expand tremendously into the future. All right, next chart, please. So just briefly, so how we're doing the requirements process and acquisition differently. And you all may have seen this chart before. I'll just kind of briefly run over it. But in the upper left-hand corner is where we start with the Space Warfighting Analysis Center. So that organization is ran by Andrew Cox, and they are developing force designs for each of the different pieces of the architecture. So they do red and blue wargaming, determining where our weaknesses are, and then they do their own industry examination. Our SSC front door will feed that examination, and they look at what capabilities are out there, and they develop just a overarching force design for how we're going to go after that. And so the first one they delivered was missile warning, missile track. That was delivered last year. And so I'll kind of walk you through how that goes through the process then. So they completed that force design, and it flows into the CSRO, which is the Chief Strategic and Resourcing Officer in the Space Force Headquarters, or the S8. So they take that force design and turn it into a formal requirement. And our goal in the future is that this is all happening digitally. It's not, there's no paper writing. It's a digital transformation process from force design into the requirement. And then the requirement goes into the Program Integration Council. So that's another role that Dr. Leon and the Space Systems Integration Office has, is they're the secretariat for the Program Integration Council. Now the council has space representatives senior representatives from Missile Defense Agency, Air Force Rapid Capabilities Office, Space Rapid Capabilities Office, SWAC, of course, SSC, Space Development Agency, and the NRO. So pretty much all of the players in national security space are sitting at the table in the PIC. And what they do is, and we rotate the chair of the PIC among those members. So when the force design and then the requirement comes into the PIC examines that requirement and decides which organization is best suited to go after that capability as it's written, that requirement. And what we saw with missile warning, missile track was a decision that, and then the PIC actually takes their recommendation, and that goes to the Space Acquisition Council, which of course is chaired by Mr. Calvelli. And so that's where the decision is made as to how to go about that acquisition. For missile warning, missile track, it was decided that it would be a collaborative effort between SSC and SDA, with a lot of great input from MDA and high engagement there. But having the PIC meet monthly, that engagement gives us the opportunity to find best athletes for delivering capability, but also ensures that we're maximizing every dollar that this nation puts for national security space, that we're maximizing the effectiveness of that dollar by putting it into the right hands for the right acquisition approach, which is what all of this is about, right? Doing commercial just gives us the opportunity to get so much more bang for the buck than just building up the traditional development and production capability. So that's what we're striving to do, is just leverage everything that's going on in space. And it's challenging because space is just expanding so rapidly, as I talked about earlier. And so finding ways like our SSC front door, like AFWorks, SpaceWorks, like our pitch days, finding ways to corral what's going on out there, feed that information into the process, and then utilize that capability is a huge challenge. And we think we've got the structure set up to do that. So with that, I think I will open it up. Chris, if you'd like to go to questions. Next chart, please. So you've probably all heard General Raymond talk about this. We cannot afford to lose space. Without it, we will fail. I think you saw that in what we put forward in the FY23 budget. You saw growth in the space domain, larger growth probably than we've had in years, in terms of how we're going to get after what we see as the threat. And next chart, please. And what I like to say here is fights on, and we need to keep our workforce focused on the fact that the threat is real, and we've got to be ready by 2026. And with that, Chris, I will open it up for any questions you have.
That's fantastic. Very helpful and informative overview of the changes that have been undertaken at SSC. You obviously have an enormous amount of activities, contract work, development work, relationships, partnerships, et cetera, underway. And kudos to you and Lieutenant General Gutlein for effectively managing those activities. Just one, yet another shameless commercial for NSSA here. You mentioned Claire Leon, who serves as Executive Secretary of the Program Integration Council and runs the Space System Integration Office. We will have a SpaceTime interview with her next week at this same time, next Thursday at this same time. So we'll look forward to that discussion.
Awesome.
We have some questions from our audience, and let me turn to those. The first question is, can industry expect an impact to future acquisitions from the Space Development Agency once SDA folds under the Space Systems Command? And if so, what kind of changes or impacts do you anticipate when SDA falls under Space Systems Command?
So actually, I don't think you're going to see a lot of changes into what Space Development Agency is already doing. I think what they're delivering is very unique, and it's not something we're partnering with them, and we need to integrate what they're delivering. So one of the things on our plate is to ensure that we've got a ground that can integrate with everything that they're bringing to the fight. But their focus on LEO is amazing, and so that partnership I expect to be, it'll just robust out, I think, as they come into the Space Force. So I'm really looking forward to it. That's
great. A question from the audience is, how long should the typical response be from SSC front door? How long does that process from the time, say, that a company approaches the front door and provides information, provides a proposal, if you will? What is your expectations about how long that process will take?
So right now, I will say that I don't I don't believe it's as fast as it will be. The goal, as I said, is a real handoff. I've talked with Colonel Joe Roth, who's running this, and he understands this. When you're online ordering something or doing something, and you get that live, would you like to chat now? That's my vision for SSC Front Door, is that when you're hooked in, you're getting somebody immediately responding to you. So that's the long-term goal. I think in the media, we're still manning up that office and we're still building out that capability. So my guess is right now you're probably seeing a few days before you get engagement.
And further, wearing your contracting hat, you've had enormous responsibility and experience in the contracting world, dating back to the Missile Defense Agency and other things. I'm not sure of anyone who has more experience in contracting than you, Joy. But as head of the Space Force contracting activity, how would you assess the Space Force's record in leveraging all available acquisition authorities and tools to ensure rapid acquisition of critical space technologies? What are some of the lessons that have been learned there? And is there one particular mechanism, whether it's OTAs or other, that you think particularly suit the space community, the space development R&D activities? Or obviously there's no one size fits all here, but what's your general take on how well you have done, the government has done in that area, and what are some of the lessons that you've derived from that for going forward?
Right. Yeah. So OTAs to me have been a critical piece of acquisition agility that we've been able to leverage. We've leveraged those not only in spec, but we leverage those in launch in order to enable shared cost sharing across when even big industry, if they're investing in new capabilities and new technology for their commercial market, we can leverage that in an OTA. So there's all sorts of ways to, again, maximize the effectiveness of the $1 spent of national security space money if we can share costs with those big guys. But more importantly is that like I said, the commercial market is going so fast. Using OTAs so that those non-traditionals aren't saddled with having to have detailed approved cost estimating systems and have DCMA come in and approve all of their purchasing systems and everything, which small companies can't afford to have those systems to the level of sophistication that is required of those certifications. So that's been a huge piece. But another thing that I've really admired, and it's not me, it's our contracting team and our program management team. The alternate acquisition, the adaptive framework that OSD has put together, they're still working on the space aspect, but we started leveraging the mid-tier acquisition approach several years ago, and we have multiple programs in that approach. And to me, that has sped the process of acquisition for us immensely. And it fits because, as I talked about, we're talking about 2026, 2027. Using MTA authorities, you've got to be delivering a prototype in 5 years. And that's what we've got to do, right? To get after the threat, that's what we've got to do. So it's a natural fit. And then it enables us to tailor documentation that's required for what would typically be required for a large ACAP program. It enables us to tailor that. And that's something I felt like that's why we need a space acquisition pathway, is because there's some things, that you do for aircrafts and ships, like building out this massive depot supply chain and how you're going to repair a ship, because you're going to keep a ship going for 20, 30 years. Well, satellites, right? We're building satellites now. We're not expecting, we're saying 3 to 5 years, and then you're going to do new technology. So it's a different animal. And so a lot of the documentation that is expected to feed those big programs really doesn't apply, and MTA gives us the opportunity to tailor that out and then speed the acquisition process.
Well, that's great. Appreciate it very much. We have another question from the audience, and I'm sure this is reflected by many of the folks watching today. In fact, I get calls practically every day from folks in industry saying, how can I get invited to some of the upcoming either reverse industry days or some of the other activities? What's the process there? Is this a case where you guys, look at industry and say, well, these companies, X, Y, and Z ought to be in the room, or what's the best way for companies to express interest in participating, and or what should their expectation be about actually getting invited to these events?
Right. So your best bet is the SSC front door and going to that and hooking in. And I will acknowledge, as I said, it's in its infancy. But when you see the Reverse Industry Days that's coming up July 28th, when that pops onto the SSC front door, that's your best venue for getting your name in and getting included. Now I'll acknowledge some events that we've had require us to be at a different classification level. And so those may be more challenging for some folks to be able to attend. But generally, we're trying to get everyone in the door to the maximum extent practicable.
And then turning back to your comments on Assistant Secretary Calvelli, based on what you've seen and heard thus far, what do you see as his primary goals and objectives? He's made some public comments along these lines, but what's the impact been so far, and what do you see as the main thrusts of his tenure, if you will, if you can speculate a little bit on both what you've seen and heard and looking forward?
Sure. So he came out to SSC very shortly after taking the seat, which we really appreciated. And he is all about driving speed into the acquisition process, but speed with discipline. So he is looking at acquisition, tackling and blocking, making sure that we're doing, cost, schedule, and technical are the key elements he's going to be focused on, and making sure we're delivering programs on time, no matter what. And then beyond that, I mean, that's his initial focus, is just making sure we're doing that. And then he wants to ensure that we're building out an architecture that integrates into the rest of the warfighting domain, right? So that we're bringing in space and sea, all of the areas that are critical to winning, right? And then he wants to ensure that our architectures are more resilient. So I think that's where, he's really appreciating what Space Development Agency brings to the fight and what Space RCO brings to fight and Air Force RCO, because everything that we're doing along with our allied partners is making our architectures more resilient. And I know that's been one of his other key elements that he wants to ensure we deliver. Exactly.
And I think we have time for one more question before the bewitching hour here. What's the status of collaboration between SSC and the National Reconnaissance Office? Given that Lieutenant General Gutlein served as Deputy Director of the NRO, and obviously Frank Calvelli is a seasoned veteran of the NRO, do you see closer relationships there? And if so, in which areas? Is this a case where more of the NRO flavor and mentality is going to bleed into SSC, or the other way around? Or how do you see that playing out?
Yeah, well, so we already, we do partner with NRO on certain key areas. Space domain awareness comes to mind, but one of the things that's really advantageous is General Gutlein not only came from the NRO, but he also prior to that was Missile Defense Agency. And both organizations have unique ways of doing their acquisition business. And so what we've tried to do with the SSC stand-up and our realignment is to try to take the best of all worlds, right? And try to apply all of those into the SSC structure. So we've been meeting with Missile Defense Agency and NRO leadership on a regular basis. I think we're doing it now quarterly, where we pretty much go out there or they come here and just sharing ideas and lessons learned and how we can collaborate better. So I think you'll probably see a little bit of blending and us getting probably more like both of them combined. We're just trying to take the best of all acquisition organizations and apply them.
Right, best of breed.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Joy, for joining us today for this very interesting and informative SpaceTime interview. And thank you to our audience for your participation and especially for your questions. On behalf of the National Security Space Association, thanks for tuning in, and have a great day, everyone. Keep up the fine work, Joy. You're really on top of your game.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right, out here.